Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Simplifying Your Self-Service Strategy. I'm Rachel and I'm going to be your webinar chairperson today. Delighted to welcome a brilliant panel of experts. I've really learned a lot from them, so I'm really looking forward to them sharing their presentations with you all. And welcome back to Paul Weald, Contact Center Innovator. Welcome, Paul.
Yep, thank you, Rachel, and good to be part of the sort of panel today.
And for people who've missed you on, I'm sure at least 10 webinars that we've run with you. Do you want to share a bit about you?
Yeah, so my background is now 30 years in the industry, going all the way back to when we first picked up the phone to transact, instead of sort of walking down the high street. A lot of that time as a consultant, and really in the last 5 years as an investor, so supporting early stage businesses, doing some quite innovative things. And yeah, it's great to actually be here.
Brilliant. And also delighted to welcome to his first webinar, Dave McMahon from NewDay. Welcome, Dave.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you.
And do you want to share a bit about yourself as well?
Yes, a bit about my background. So I went to uni to study sound technology, hence the background. Obviously didn't follow that career path, just wanted to get into work. So I started on the phones at British Gas, and I've just gradually worked my way through into more process improvement, business improvement type roles. That's where I found my passion, starting with Six Sigma, doing customer journey design, customer experience, and then now ultimately leading an optimization department, which is focused on kind of all of these different areas, CI, CX, innovation, etc.
Brilliant. Well, we look forward to hearing your presentation. And also delighted to welcome back Jay Gupta from Talkdesk. Welcome back, Jay.
Thank you, Rachel. Great to be here.
And do you want to share a bit about who Talkdesk are?
Sure. So Talkdesk is a cloud contact center software provider. We are present in many countries, and right now in the UK, we are helping a lot of companies adopt new technologies, in particular around AI. And that's actually my sort of specialty. I'm here to really advocate sort of benefits of AI and how we're seeing self-service transform with better technology underpinning the capabilities that new tools can do. Brilliant.
Well, looking forward to hearing everyone's presentation. Just a few housekeeping bits. A reminder that today's the discussion is going on in our chat room. That's on cch.chat or callcenterhelper.com/chat. You just need to put in your first name and your email address, and it will take you straight through. A few added bonuses of being in the chat room are that you can download a copy of everyone's slides. Lots of information on there, so I would definitely recommend that. That's up here. You can also connect with all our speakers on LinkedIn through this link as well. And also we are going to be doing our trusty quiz later on in the webinar, and the buttons to take part are in our chat room. It is in a separate window, but hopefully with people having big screens, you can put it side by side, or a lot of people like to run the webinar chat room on their phone. That's cch.chat. Just a reminder that we are taking a recording of today's webinar, and that will be available later on this afternoon on callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars. Just also a reminder that log into the chat room, and we are running our prize for the best tip. We have champagne, a box of chocolates, a gift card, or a charity donation for the best tip. And just to be able to identify them, if you write #question if you'd like to ask our panel a question, or write #tip if you want to be in with a chance of winning. So before we kick off today's webinar, I'd like to share a quick poll. So I'm going to launch that. And the question is, what is the main driver in your organization for self-service? Is it improved customer experience? Is it customer preference? Is it cost reduction, out of hours service, or reducing customer effort? Paul, if you were going to place a bet, what do you think is going to come out on top?
Yeah, I'm sure there will be in economic times now that are going to get more challenging for our customers in 2022. I'm sure there's going to be a kind of cost reduction angle. That would be the obvious answer. I hope that we will see some people thinking about this in terms of what it does for improving customer experience and reducing effort. That would be a nice balance to sort of come through.
Oh, well, let's see. I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So yeah, brilliant. 60% of people saying improve customer experience. Yeah, 90 equal 19% cost reduction and reducing customer effort. 2% saying out of hours service, and 0 people saying customer preference. Paul, big celebration. I think a good shout.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, no, that's we have the right audience, Rachel.
Brilliant. Well, I'm going to stop sharing and get you to put your slides up, Paul.
Okay, thank you. Oops. To the start here. Okay, so we will start, and actually very appropriate, bearing in mind what people have just said in response to the poll, and that is in framing the discussion. I like to think of a sort of thought for the day, and this quote comes from an award-winning contact center, and I think it's very apt for today's discussion, which is that we all need to remember that good customer service costs less than bad customer service. And I think that would be very true for making your self-service strategies work. And so some of the things to bear in mind will be around the channels that you choose to offer self-service through, being very clear about what a customer wants to do at the point at which they're actually making that choice, and actually how effectively those channels work. And in terms of framing what Dave and Jay are going to talk about, I'll share with you a little bit of the kind of theory and some of the behavioral research that's kind of going on in terms of consumer mindset when they're actually making these decisions. So there's a very good Gartner study from a couple of years ago. I like it because it was actually a survey of customers. And the first thing that they found was as and when you introduce more channels, so in other words, if you introduce email and chatbots and other types of service, actually there's an inverse outcome, which is that the more channels that you add, the less they work for customers, whether that is terms of achieving a first contact resolution or whether that's a customer sort of satisfaction. And the psychology behind that is that actually the more choice you give a customer, if you're not careful, it almost becomes a case of sort of paralysis. In other words, instead of actually making it easier for a customer to do something, it's actually more inhibiting and actually making a choice. And that also explains why with a lot of self-service portals and a lot of decisions that you make in a web or a mobile environment, as a consumer, you're actually given three choices. And by giving three choices, it means that you're actually narrowing down and making sense for the user to actually make a decision. The other factor from the Gartner research is that although you may offer an online capability, for example, a website as a kind of a first option, if that doesn't resolve the inquiry, then a customer will naturally fall into the channel that they are most sort of familiar with. And as I said in the outset, I've been in the industry now for 30 years, and the good old telephone is still as being as used today as was the sort of case previously. So phone is where people will naturally gravitate to. But again, there's some theory, some behavioural theory behind that. So this research, I think, stands the test of time. It's Nicola Millard, Dr. Millard from BT, some research that she did now 5 years ago, but I still think it's relevant. And that is that it's a combination of the mindset the customer has when they're actually engaging with your organizations, as well as the tasks that they're actually trying to do. So if it's something visionary where you're looking at a new experience or a new purchase, then actually as a consumer, you're quite comfortable to use self-service options to kind of browse. If it's something that you're doing regularly, a utilitarian type purchase, so paying a bill, doing something on a kind of monthly basis, then going to a sort of mobile application is, again, ideally something that you would be comfortable as a consumer using. But if you're experiencing difficulty and having problems, you're in a customer in crisis, then that's when you actually most use the phone. And the research showed that, you know, someone who's doing a regular activity like paying a bill, yes, over half of them are quite comfortable to use a self-service tool, but actually if it's a moment of crisis, then it's a similar percentage, again, looking to use the assisted service of sort of agents. And if you want to then enable those consumers so that they're less inclined to use the phone, then the guidance is that you need to be able to not necessarily offer an amazing service, but actually take away all of that pain. So take away the sort of negative emotions. So the ways that you can do that is make it really easy at the first point of interaction for a user to help themselves, you know, whether that's watching a video, whether it's reading a how-to guide, whether it's being directed to a knowledge base article by a search engine that is accurate. So that's a way of being able to allow the consumer to find information out for themselves. Then if you do present them with an automated service like a chatbot, you know, again, if that is not appropriate, is relevant, it doesn't have the content available, then provide an escalation path so that they can get through to assisted service. And also something that sort of Dave mentioned is it's perfectly acceptable that if a customer is phoning you and you know that the intent relates to something that can be done self-service or can be done through a different channel, that you can actually target that user and actually drive them and nudge them to, you know, to a sort of different channel. So there's lots of ways in which a digital capability can be promoted and used, but it's about actually finding the right kind of, you know, sort of time and place to do that. And to finish off with an example, so this is a project that I did last year. It's a client who is in kind of sort of software business, so they provide accountancy software and payroll software and so forth. So they have an app. You have to be able to kind of, you know, log on and sort of use the service. And they coined a strategy for self-service which they called right customer, right channel, right time, right person. And what does that mean? Well, first of all, it means that those customer journeys that are most relevant and happen most often, whether that's part of purchase or onboarding or actually getting help, then map those journeys so that you understand what information you can actually provide, and also make sure that that information is available at the first point of sort of contact, and then measure that to be able to see whether that's actually resolving the issue. And if it's not, you know, that isn't the end of the world, but basically back to sort of Schwartz, give the customer three choices. And the way that they actually analysed that was to say, well, what's the type of issue? So is it something where the user is just seeking reassurance? If I make the change in the accounts, you know, is it going to give the VAT correction? Is it going to calculate the sort of VAT amount correctly? That's something where, for this client, they basically said, well, let's find a cohort of experts that you can ask a question of in terms of getting that sort of reassurance, and that took the inquiry away from the sort of contact centre. And if it was something that was more complex, then basically they looked at the intent and the customer journeys and said, is that something that needs resolving now, or is it something that the user can potentially wait? And if it's urgent, a critical activity, they then offered a proactive chat service, and those chat agents had the ability to kind of screen share and, again, coach the user one-to-one in terms of how they could be using the software. If it was less urgent, then they basically allowed the user to be able to complete an online form, maybe upload screenshots or other information, and that went straight into their CRM system. It created a case, and the case had a sort of service level to actually respond. So in doing this, the way that the self-service strategy emerged was it was very clear about who the customer was and what they were trying to do, and that then determined sort of, you know, what sort of happened next. So hopefully that's kind of relevant for the other presentations that are going on. But do come back to the thought for the day, which is that you need to remember that good customer service is actually a better outcome than sort of bad. Back to you, Rachel.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Paul. I'm just going to stop sharing. So if everyone wanted to write in the chat room in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about Paul's presentation? Paul, brilliant presentation. I really took away, you know, my takeaways were more channel choice doesn't help the customer. You know, resolution rate and CSAT goes down. Customers will naturally gravitate towards their most familiar channel, usually the phone, if they can't get their answer on their kind of first choice. And I really liked the right customer, right channel, right time, and right person. So thank you so much for that, Paul. The chat room, it's finally starting to fly. I was getting a bit worried. We had 1 tip, yeah, everyone, perfect chance to win a prize. We've had a tip in from Alex, who said, upskill your teams in what the self-service options look/feel like. This will help them to promote it more effectively to customers for future issues they might have. Dave, what are your thoughts on this one?
I think I actually make this exact point in one of my slides that, yeah. Educating the contact center, and I think, as you mentioned as well, Rachel, if the customer's calling in for something that can be self-served, then it's the responsibility of the contact center to educate that customer on how they go about that and why they should want to go about that. A classic example I give it in our business is if a customer calls up because they forget their PIN for their card and they speak to the contact center, our only option is to send out a paper reminder, which takes 5 days. If we tell that customer, if you go on the app, they can view their PIN right there and then, so within minutes. So it's that kind of sales pitch that we expect our associates to be having with customers, not just to tell them how and what to do, but also why they should be doing it.
Brilliant. So we've also had a tip in from another Rachel. I promise it's not me trying to win a prize. Use some of your existing teams to be self-service champions. Involve them in the rollout of self-service options and use them to drive momentum on the shop floor. Paul, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think that's a variation on a theme of the previous idea, which is that everybody needs to know what the choices and options for a sort of customer are, and also remembering that your contact center agents speak to more customers in a day than almost certainly the sort of senior management do. Then actually I think they would be a pretty good indicator of whether they think these capabilities will actually work. So again, a variation on the theme of this tip is, why don't you use your existing teams to actually come up with the ideas?
Yeah, brilliant. So Julie said, speak to your customers and get them involved in the development of the self-service portal to ensure it's user-friendly and meets their needs. I think everyone's having the same idea. Alex, obviously trying to win the champagne, says, even though you want them to self-serve, don't hide alternative contact options from them. If they can't find an answer and can't easily find how to contact you, they're more likely to go somewhere who will help. Jay, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we are hearing more and more that good customer service is a competitive advantage for companies more than ever. People, you know, we don't have, as consumers, we don't have that patience to hang around and try and, you know, wait to be served. And so there's so much choice, and it's so easy to switch, you know, different companies, but different providers, that if you don't nail the customer experience, then, you know, the risk of losing a customer is higher than ever.
Yeah, and Paul, this goes back to your kind of familiar channel choice. You know, if they can't find what they're looking for in self-serve, make it easy for them.
Yes, I mean, the only thing to remember from the case study I mentioned of the accounting and payroll business, when we started, we counted that there were 15 different channel choices. Before we started, guess what? They used to have online screens where they basically said, you can phone us, you can email us, you can, and they thought that was being helpful. So yeah, so the only caveat to Alex with this one is, for sure, the self-service option needs to be right and relevant, and you need to give them an escalation path or an option. But don't, remember the sort of rule of three. Don't try and offer sort of too much choice.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I think a last tip before we continue. Amy said, I do agree with self-serve, and we need to ensure that our agents are helping our customers to do this. But also, I don't believe in always pushing this. With our business, are still very much available for those customers who can't self-serve or don't want to. There's nothing worse than an automated service or not being able to find an answer. This is going to infuriate the customer. Yeah, Dave, what are your thoughts on this one?
I mean, this is a tricky one for me, because I'm one of those customers that I will do anything to avoid a self-service channel, because I just want to speak to someone and get it sorted as quickly as possible. So I totally get it, and I try to apply that mentality to everything we do with like the IVR design. So looking at kind of route to completion and using all of the data available to understand, how many steps did this customer have to go through to get to the answer? Did they end up dropping out to an agent? And if they did, use speech analytics to understand why was that failed? Why did that fail in the IVR? Was it because the journey was convoluted? Was it because the option wasn't there? And I think that kind of is what we certainly use to kind of indicate how we should be building our self-service tools out. But I certainly agree with this, that the trick is balance. It's getting it right for the customer and the business.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's a great opportunity to hand over the baton to you. So I am going to stop sharing. If you wanted to bring up your screen.
This come through?
Yep, perfect.
Cool. So I will try and keep it brief, because there's a lot of content in here. So just to give a bit of an overview, because I think this is quite an important point. So NewDay we're an interesting organisation, because we're not just one brand. We have many brands. Some of them are our own brands, and some of them are our partner brands, as you can see down here at the bottom. So when that comes to designing a self-service strategy, obviously there's a lot of complexity there, because we've got to keep a whole bunch of different customer demographics happy. We've got to keep a whole bunch of different clients happy. But we also realistically can't have a bespoke self-service strategy for every individual client. So I think that's some kind of key background to how we've approached our self-service strategy. So I think just to give a high-level background, so the overarching aim from kind of 5 years ago to where we are now is we set out with kind of an ambition to be the best-in-class frictionless customer experience, digital customer experience. The problem was that everything was outsourced, so obviously that makes it very slow and expensive to make changes, and that didn't align with our value or our ambitions at all. So the solution that we've put in place over the last 5 years is to in-house everything, and every one of our self-service channels has kind of gone through this same journey of bring the development, bring the skill set in-house, and then we can build it at the pace that we want to and to the scope that we want to. So just to kind of, I guess, give a bit of an outline of where we've achieved, where we've come to in that journey. So as you can see in the top left there, the vast majority, over 99% of our transactions now are done on the web and the mobile app. So we've got this ambition to be kind of a digital first organization. And from looking at that graph, you'd say we've largely achieved it. However, that 1% still equates to around 120 to 150,000 calls a month. So there's a lot of opportunity there, but it's not low-hanging fruit. So I think that's key to kind of how we've approached encouraging those customers to adopt self-serve. You can see there from the top right that it's not just a case of more transactions are being done online, but that has translated into a reduction in calls into the contact center. So we are seeing that shift from traditional telephony channels into the digital channels. Bottom left here, you might at first glance look at this and think, okay, that's not much of an achievement. We've kind of stayed relatively stagnant in terms of IVR utilization. But I guess the key call out here, from my perspective, is as we've shifted more of the basic transactions online, such as making a payment, setting up a direct debit, the type of calls that are coming through into the contact center are more complex in nature. So to be able to maintain that IVR utilization, we've had to continually build out more complex self-service journeys that work for our customers. And lastly, all of this has to be underpinned by platform availability. So it doesn't take a lot for a customer to try and use your mobile app or your IVR and it be down for them to lose confidence in it, customers' expectations nowadays, as you can see from the expectations that people like Amazon and Netflix set, everything needs to work all the time. So our ambition to have as close to 100% platform availability has been key to this strategy. So I'll run through this slide relatively quickly, and I want to call out up front that this is specific to our use case. So if it comes across as kind of an instruction sheet, it's not supposed to, because this won't be a one-size-fits-all. But for us, what's worked is, first of all, understanding the customer and the business needs. I guess the key call out here is the word needs. So there is a difference between customer needs and customer wants. They might want to call, but they might not need to if there is a self-service channel available. So there's an opportunity there for an education piece. I think backed up by, it's kind of really refreshing for me to see Paul's slides and the Gartner research that kind of says, don't offer everything all the time and accept that, it's not right to just try and, go all out putting self-service channels on top of self-service channels. That's been a really key learning for us. I mean, you can invest heavily in the state-of-the-art technology and try and solve your most complex queries, but ultimately for us, we've attempted to do that in some instances and found out that the cost to do so just far outweighs just accepting that in this instance, until the technology catches up, it's right to be handled by a human. Prioritized channel development is kind of, I guess, BAU. This echoes what Paul said. So not just offering everything everywhere. So where do you want your customers to go to first, and what do you want the channel to be that you invest in the most? In our case, that's web and app, and that's where we drive traffic to. And then understand that, after that, we've got chatbots and IVRs, and then we've got the contact center. Build and iterate fast. So I guess any organization that operates on agile principles will follow this, and this is why we brought everything in-house. Being able to release things fast and learn from customers what works and what doesn't has been key to, I guess, the optimization of our strategy and amending things so that they do suit both customer and business need. White label or reuse API. So this has been really key for us. Obviously, as I mentioned, we have so many different brands. It's not possible to build a bespoke app or website for each brand. So the approach that we've taken is to white label. So underlying our IVR, our mobile app, our website, it's all the same. It's just rebranded. And that's been really key to kind of making sure that, it's not too much effort to deliver these things from a business perspective. I think, as we talked about in the chat before this, use the contact center support adoption. This has been really key to us. That 1% of customers that are still calling, how do we educate them and take them on that journey to understand what our self-service offering is and how and why they should adopt it? And lastly, this is kind of repeating the point a little bit, but it's just about raising awareness of capability. So not just using the contact center, but I've got a slide later on about partnering with marketing teams. And as you deliver a new feature, some customers will organically adopt it, but in other instances, they need to be aware that this is now something they can do. You can now view your PIN online. You can now register your card lost and stolen. It's important not to assume that they will just pick up on a new feature, that you do have to make them aware of it. This has been really key for us. So data and insight is a massive part of everything that we do. I mentioned that earlier, I think in response to one of the questions. So we have a number of different avenues that we look at in order to understand what is working for our customers. So voice of the customer, I think everyone will be familiar with NES and NPS programs and customer verbatim. We have a brand ambassadors program with Limitless, so we can actually test some of our features with customers, send out questionnaires to them. How's our IVR working? Could you go through and, register your card lost or stolen? How did it work? Tell us about your experience, all that kind of stuff. Speech analytics, I think we've got a couple of my analytics team on the call, so they work really hard on speech and text analytics to understand what is the demand that is still coming through to the contact center and what can be done about it. Some of it is, we need new self-service journeys. Some of it is customer education. Some of it is just right that it's landed in the contact center, and we have to accept that that's where we want it to be. CSI benchmarking, again, understanding how we're positioned against some of our competitors is key. Not just because we want to celebrate, when we're great, but we also want to see who is it that's ahead of us and learn from them. What are they doing in their journeys that's different to ours? And then lastly, our digital coordinators. So again, I think Alex made this point about using the contact center. So we've got a specific team called digital coordinators that are there for customers that are struggling to get logged in or registered online. And rather than just telling them you can do this online, it's a handheld journey. So we accept that there's an uplift in AHT to do this, but once you take that customer on and you say, okay, this is how you get yourself registered, the theory is that moving forward that will become their channel of choice. So it's that education piece. So I guess what this slide is trying to call out is that there's not a one-size-fits-all strategy for every type of query. So for basic transactions, for us, for things like payments, PIN request, this used to be the lion's share of our calls. These are the things that are ripe for automation, in my opinion. You can build these quite easily in the IVR, in your mobile apps, in your chatbots. Then moving down, you've got more complex queries. So this might be a customer wants to pay their bill, but they want an explanation of it first. A little bit harder to automate because every customer conversation is different. So in this example, our strategy has been to move these customers to a lower cost to serve channel. And I mentioned things like IVR deflect before. So moving customers from telephony into chat where you can get that additional concurrency. That's been a big part of our strategy. And lastly, digital help. So this is, I mentioned in the last slide, that human education piece. And this is about a quarter of all of our calls now. A customer's calling saying, I'm trying to do something online, but I'm struggling. And there's a lot of external regulations like PSD2, if anyone's familiar, that has made it a lot harder. You've probably all experienced it yourself when you get an OTP sent to you just to buy something online. This is all off the back of regulation that adds friction into the journey for customers. And what our people are there in the contact center for is to help customers understand why that friction's there and how to get through it. So I'll just quickly mention, I can see I'm running out of time, but I'll just quickly mention a couple of the different initiatives that we've delivered to introduce new entry points into our self-service channels. So I think this is a quite important piece for us. So unauthenticated chat is allowing customers that are trying to get logged in or registered. As I mentioned, a fifth of all of our calls are customers saying, I'm trying to get logged in or registered. So what we introduced to prevent that channel switch is allowing customers to actually chat to us before the point of login or registration, whereas typically I know a lot of organizations will only offer chat when the customer's logged in because they've passed security and credentials. We actually now also offer it before they're logged in, as we can see they're struggling. So if they put a passcode in wrong twice, it pops up and says, we can see you're struggling. Can we help with that? Agent text messaging. So every agent in the contact center can now send text messages to customers while they're on the phone. Really simple process. This could be links to download the app, deep links into specific areas of the app. So here's where you make a payment, here's where you view your PIN. We can send them help videos on how to get logged in and registered, one-time passwords, all this kind of stuff. That's been really powerful. IVR deflect, I think I've already talked about that. So customers, calling into the IVR and then being able to chat instead if that's their preference. And this has gone down really well with vulnerable customers that sometimes felt that they needed to call, but they didn't want to. They're not comfortable talking to someone on the phone. So giving them the option to chat to us before they drop to agent, that's been really powerful. And lastly, something that we're delivering this year is expansion to new platforms. So WhatsApp and Messenger. So just lastly, I think last couple of slides. So first one is, as I mentioned earlier, so raising awareness of our capability has been really important. So partnering with our marketing teams to make customers aware not only of what the features are, but why they should use them. And in some instances, incentivizing customers. So this one on the left that you can see here, we ran an initiative a couple of years ago where for every customer that signed up to e-statements, so to digital statements, we would plant a tree on their behalf. So obviously you've got the whole environmental impact to that, not only from the reduction in paper from sending out bills, but obviously from the planting of trees and the carbon offsetting as well. I think we planted about 30,000 trees off the back of that. And then other initiatives, this one you can see in the third here, this one right down here where it says quick as a flash. This is what I was talking about before about how long it takes to do something over the phone versus how long it takes to do something on the app. And we used our brand ambassadors to test this. So we said, call up and ask for a PIN and then go on the app and ask for a PIN. And we did that time in motion and timed it. And that allowed us to go out to customers and said, look, this is how much quicker it is if you just self-serve. And I think that tapped into a lot of customers that, like me, think the quickest way to get something done is to call. This is that education piece that kind of says, actually, it's not, there's a better way of doing it. Last slide now, so just very quickly. So I guess just key takeaways from our perspective on what we've learned from our strategy. Number one is understanding customer and business needs. That's crucial. Number two, accept the limitations of the technology and apply it wisely. I think this echoes what Paul says. Number three is reuse tech. So communication between products is key. So if you've used an API to develop a functionality online, the chances are that same API can be used in your IVR and your chatbot, but it's not always the case that different product owners communicate with each other. So communication between the different products and the different technologies is key. The fourth point, so some adoption comes organically, some customers need to be guided. I guess that's the last slide I just talked about. And then lastly, and arguably most importantly, just always use data and insight to continually improve. So speech analytics, any sources that you've got, learn from your customers and see what's working and see what's not, and then quickly develop off the back of that. Run over there a bit, Rachel, sorry, but hopefully that was useful.
You're forgiven. Thank you very much for that. Just a reminder, we are coming to our quiz now, so you will need to be in our chat room. That's callcenterhelper.com/chat, or just type in cch.chat, and maybe while you're there, you can share in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about Dave's presentation? Dave, brilliant presentation, really learned a lot. You know, my key takeaways were, you know, customer issue resolution program acts as feedback to self-serve. So, you know, your brand ambassadors and digital coordinators were all, you know, really insightful. Providing the customer with the right entry points into self-service channels, you know, not just a little button on the website. You know, there are multiple ways to get into it. And also, you know, as a former marketing person, normally the bad guy, you know, it's always great to hear about partnering with them to really, you know, raise awareness and promote adoption of self-service capabilities. That was really insightful. So thank you so much for that. So we are coming over to our quiz now. A reminder that the quiz buttons are at the bottom of the chat room, and you just need to use, you know, if you think the answer is A, you obviously click the right button. So I'm going to switch over and find our things. So we've got about half the audience already logged into the chat room. Last chance to take part. There is another prize for the winner, so definitely worth being there. So I'm going to start the quiz. Oh, I've got my thing over the top. That's not very helpful. So the first question, true or false, 40% of consumers now prefer self-service over human contact. Is it A, true, or B, false? True or false, 40% of consumers now prefer self-service over human contact. So you just need to click the button in the chat room. Last chance. And most people getting that one right. It is true. Long gone are the days when a phone call was the only option to reach a support team. Consumers want to be in control. The service expectations are increasing day by day. So Weald's currently in the lead. So second question, when was the term self-service first used? Was it A, 1917, B, 1927, C, 1937, or D, 1947? And keeping with John T, as he always says, I'll give you a clue, it ends in a 7. So last chance. Oh, actually, nobody got that one right. The correct answer is actually 1917. The term self-service originated in retail. In 1917, a man named Clarence Saunders received a US patent for a self-serving store. So third question, what percentage of contact centers believe that advancing self-service capabilities will likely achieve the biggest return on investment? Is it A, 26.2%, B, 36.2%, C, 46.2%, or D, 56.2%? That's what percentage of contact centers believe that advancing self-service capabilities will likely achieve the biggest ROI? 26.2%, 36.2%, 46.2%, or 56.2%? And oh, close at the top. The correct answer was B, 36.2%. When improving customer experience, the majority of our audience said self-service is where they think they can get maximum value for money. Slight change at the top. And final question, who said it takes half your life before you discover life is a do-it-yourself project? Was it A, Martha Stewart, B, Napoleon Hill, C, Oprah Winfrey, or D, Paul Coelho? Who said it takes half your life before you discover life is a do-it-yourself project? A, Martha Stewart, B, Napoleon Hill, C, Oprah Winfrey, or D, Paul Coelho? And the correct answer, oh, most people not getting that one right. Actually, bottom answer was Napoleon Hill. A saying from another famous Napoleon, Napoleon Bonaparte, is, if you want something done, do it yourself. And the winner is Laura66. Congratulations, Laura. We will be in touch after the webinar. So I'm going to head back over, and Jay, I'm going to stop sharing and let you take us through your presentation.
Sure, just bear with me for a sec. Can you see my screen?
I can, yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so there's a popular phrase that I've heard quite often, which is everything that can be automated should be automated. Now, when I hear that, you know, I think about images of a daunting dystopia ruled entirely by robots. But in fact, the opposite is true. You know, we may have more bots doing different things for us, but their only purpose is to really make the everyday more enjoyable, more fulfilling, and really to give us a better experience by removing the things that we don't like to do, the repetitive stuff, the mundane tasks, the stuff that is really, you know, so easy that we shouldn't really have to spend more time than we should to try and get to whatever outcomes we're trying to get to. If we think about where we are in the world today, at least in the UK, you know, I would say, when was the last time, you know, we went to a bank or a travel agency to book a holiday? Yeah, of course, the pandemic did restrict those in-person visits, but it just really accelerated a trend that started before the pandemic. You know, those forces were in play before, and the pandemic's really just been a catalyst for more rapid and radical change. So the things that we used to do have been somewhat automated away, and in the society that we live in today, and the technology that surrounds us, it has pushed us, whether we admit it or not, it has pushed us to want more convenience and be served in a much faster way. And to really get to happier customers and also lower costs, companies do need to have a better way to steer their digital service and the transformations that are happening along the way. So being able to implement automation in a way that it can drive simple, predictive, proactive and responsive customer experiences, and part of that is, you know, the desire for customers to have more digital autonomy and more, well, not necessarily more, but better self-service options. And if you're responsible for running a contact center, then of course metrics like handling times and call volumes are, you know, where a lot of your focus will be. And at Talkdesk, we sort of take that into consideration about the major and the micro tasks that really take place in the different parts of that customer journey, where, you know, automation and can actually come in to reduce the handling time and improve self-service experiences. So that could be, you know, authenticating customers automatically, which for some companies, and we have a customer we know, you know, it can reduce as much as 40% of their handling time to enable customers to self-serve in a way that authentication can happen, and simplify the way that the customer is then brought on to either speaking with an agent or actually serving themselves. And when it comes to AI and AI-powered automation, there's a lot of great examples out there about how it's already breaking down communication barriers. So I just want to share 3 interesting examples. So Bloomberg, you know, they're a financial services news provider, should we say, primarily. They use an AI translation service to instantly share the breaking news with their business customers in more than 170 countries in 40 different languages. And it's imperative for them to be able to deliver up-to-date business and market news to customers all over the world in a way that it's delivered to them at the same time. Another great example is here in the UK, where the NHS is actively promoting the use of Google Translate in its website, so that people can get a better understanding of what, you know, how to access healthcare services. And then Apple are making their AI voice assistant Siri more accessible to people who suffer from speech articulation disabilities, which includes building a database of thousands of audio clips of stuttering to improve its voice recognition system. So the great news for the customer service world is that a lot of these AI techniques can be brought into customer service. And so natural conversations between humans and machines is it sort of in a similar way to how humans might communicate, is really the hallmark of intelligent systems. And what is more popularly referred to as conversational AI is really kind of a key area of development for customer service, moving away from, say, those traditional chatbots to more AI-powered virtual agents and other AI-powered tools that allow for a more natural way to interact with customers. And these techniques could include natural language processing, natural language understanding, which are branches of AI that really kind of try to understand and analyze and respond to human text and speech. So I won't go into details of all these techniques, but the point I'm trying to make is really that AI has really opened up the ability to do translations and transcriptions in multiple languages and uncover what customers are trying to say. So it's a real game changer for customer service. And it means that you can also think about making your customer service more inclusive as well. And this is just a very, very simple example here. A customer calling in may interact with an AI-powered virtual agent for a very simple query, and is asking, is the Model A super electric car available for pre-order? And what AI can do is extract important information like the product or entity that the customer is calling in about, so that the Model A super electric car, and the customers, and identify the customer's intent to purchase. Now, this is, of course, a very straightforward query. What it's really showing is that AI can understand the nuances of human language and the various different ways that people may phrase a question. But to really make it possible to implement a lot of this AI powered automation, it needs to be done in a way where you don't need to have the technical clout of the big tech companies. So not being in a position where you have to rely on your IT teams or your data scientists or developers. And, a lot of that heavy lifting isn't something that most contact centers can necessarily do. So there's been a lot of development in the area of AI that today it is possible to have what we call plug and play AI or no code AI, where you don't need to get into the weeds of how to implement it and how to make AI understand human language. And that's definitely something that Talkdesk, we're finding a lot of demand for, and that's where a lot of our innovation is really focused on, is delivering that plug and play AI to make self-service automation easier to implement. But it did take a very long time for the era of plug and play AI to come. I just want to, just a very short history lesson here, but back in I think it was 1950 when Alan Turing published a paper about if machines can think, and 70 years later they can't. Nothing has passed the Turing test. So there's been a series of developments over decades, including some very quiet periods in the evolution of AI. But it wasn't until about 2010, 2011 when some of the big tech companies like Amazon and Facebook and Google and Microsoft, where they were really pioneering in the way that AI can understand human language, what we call the deep learning revolution. So, today we know about apps like Siri and Alexa, but at the root of it was this, the ability to understand human language. So we're now in an era where software providers like Talkdesk can use a lot of that technology and build tools for contact centers that are plug and play, meaning that all that clever conversational AI can be brought into the contact center without needing to invest in a big IT project or have in-house technical expertise to fine-tune it. You can use your own non-technical customer service experts to fine-tune it and mold it in a way that it works for the dynamics of your contact center. So the truth is that automation and self-service automation is probably not optional, but start by automating what is necessary. Take a good and honest look at how things are currently done in the contact center. Consider the tasks that have the need for little demand for human judgment. Tasks that require low levels of empathy, and tasks where you're handling high volumes of data. So think about those different areas and see where self-service automation can be weaved in to really kind of transform your customer experience. And finally, before flicking the automation on switch, so to speak, it's important to simplify the way you do it and think about it in terms of, what are those essential repetitive tasks that you absolutely think should be automated. Think about the baseline, but also be bold enough to push it further into areas that you may not have considered before. Measure success in a way that think about where precious time is being taken up by your live agents, where customer queries could be handled in a more automated way, and design your automation journeys. So at Talkdesk, we provide supplementary tools to help you identify the areas that could be automated using insights tools like speech analytics, but also have the means to get some recommendations on how to design those optimal self-service journeys. And finally, if I haven't said it enough, I'll say it again. Plug and play, no code AI is very much here. Think about the fact that you can have a lot of these great technologies without having to call IT. And you can empower and upskill staff to be a big part of how you bring AI into the contact center. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for that, Jade. So I'm just going to put up a quick poll and ask, would you like to see a demonstration of the Talkdesk solution? Jay, some brilliant insight into kind of the workings behind it. The self-service economy is reinventing customer service. I think a real vital kind of takeaway for me. Customers want increased self-service options. So yeah, what are you going to do about it? And self-service automation in customer service is not optional. Start by automating what is necessary, those things that will reduce handling time, such as, tasks with little demand for human judgment, ones with low level of empathy and, high volumes of data tasks. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to end that one. The chat room has actually now been flying, so I'm going to whistle through some of these before we finish. So Peter said, don't hide the human, which I think is a really interesting one. Heather said, we make it part of our standard QA that call center staff help the customer and also educate the customer on how they can do this themselves the next time, if applicable. We've had a question in from Raymond who said, how do we balance out between giving customers self-service options, which means more work for the customer experience team, versus having a very lean customer experience team? Paul, I don't know whether you wanted, you're already smiling.
Yeah, I mean, getting, as probably was illustrated by Dave's conversation, as a practitioner, you have to have a team around gathering insight, around being able to kind of test and learn. So yeah, so there does need to be a resource inside the organization that actually takes these ideas to market and kind of makes them work. And so back to, I think it was Raymond's point, is yeah, the justification for expanding the customer service team, the customer experience team, has to be on the basis that you're going to innovate faster, and that's going to mean that your customer service is going to deliver a better outcome for the organization. That's what it's actually sort of founded on.
Yeah, and Dave, you're agreeing with that one. It is that right balance.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've always, I guess since I started doing business improvement, I've looked at my job as to put myself out of a job, which is essentially, if there's nothing left to optimize, if there's nothing left to improve, then you shouldn't need a customer experience team or an optimization team. And I've never succeeded at doing that, because I think as soon as you deliver a new innovation or a new customer experience, the next thing comes along and technology advances. And I think from my perspective, in terms of whether you grow the team or not, it just comes down to a straightforward business case. I mean, if I think that additional staff in my team will deliver benefit greater than the cost of that additional staff, then I've got a business case to support growing the team. If I don't, then I won't. I think it's as simple as that from my perspective.
Brilliant. So Mark shared a tip saying, listen to your customers and what they want. Make sure you get their insights into self-service and how appropriate your options are. Jay, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think everything comes down to good design, and good design means you need to consider how, customers interact with your services, and think about the broader customer journey. So not just what customer service or the contact center handles, but actually on your website, if you're an e-commerce business, that journey, connecting it together with the contact center journey, I think is really important. So it all begins with, having a good sense of design and designing around how customers want to interact with you.
Thank you. Yes. So we've had a tip in saying we have a pool of customers that we test our new ideas on before rolling out. Dave, I think that's a bit like your brand ambassadors, really.
Yeah, we have brand ambassadors, and then there's one that the actual developers use. It's called, I forget the name of it, but yeah, we've got a few different routes. But I'm fully supportive of this, because you learn a lot from your customers that internally you think, we've designed this journey dead easy, we understand it, but of course you do, you work in the business. When you get that customer insight, a lot of the time something that's obvious to you isn't obvious to a customer. So I can't support this statement enough.
Brilliant. So Jamie said, keep talk to an agent option always available, regardless of what self-serve channel the customer is using. Alex, another one from Alex, add QR codes to paper communications for links to things like self-serve areas, seamlessly driving customers online for both self-serve and digital comms like chat. So we've had a tip in from Michael, who said, we stopped using the generic loop music messaging that our state agencies use. Our application allowed us to create our own messaging, so we pushed those alternative methods on that loop. If the customer is on hold, they'll also be informed as a captive audience of the options available that don't involve holding on the line for an agent. Paul, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that's a very good tip from Michael. The only thing I'd add to that is what creates the kind of incentive for the customer to actually choose those self-service options. So I think if you have a way of telling the customer accurately how long the line is, how long the queue is, how long that they may wait, that again, I think is another incentive to be able to, rather than spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, however long the backlog is, to be able to actually try something different.
Yeah. So Rachel's sent in another tip saying, ensure all areas of your business are aligned and aware of self-serve options, not just customer service, call center staff. Check letters across the business are consistent and promote the right channel. We've had a question in from Peter, who said, why do we think so many businesses seek to automate but get it so badly wrong? Overly ambitious or just inadequate training? Jay, what are your thoughts on this?
I think, to be honest, the adoption to technology like AI has been, the barriers have been quite high, and the reality has been that you need to be quite tech savvy to be able to kind of bring it in, operate it, fine tune it. And I think because of that, a lot of projects have failed because it's just becomes an enormous and complex task. So that's why the plug and play no code is so important. It's not a gimmick. It is an absolute necessary way to be able to give any regular company, a company that doesn't see themselves as tech first, but really wants to focus on their customers, but also wants to bring upskill staff. The customers, but as experts, to be able to shape the automations in a way that works for their, for the dynamics of their contact center. So I think that for a lot of companies, it's been like this is the automation box. You make it work rather than the other way around.
Brilliant. And Dave, I mean, from your side, what's been key as a quick summary?
Yeah, so I think that there's 2 quick points here, because I think we've done this a lot. We've tried to automate and get things wrong, and there's 2 reasons why. One, we don't have the right DevOps around the tool that we're automating. So we bring a chatbot in and assume that we can have 2 developers and that'll be enough to fix the world, and it's just not. So having the right setup is a key part of it. And the other bit is understanding the requirements from other parts of the team. So you might have a good chatbot team, but they might rely on APIs that are development from a digital servicing team. And if the communication isn't there between those teams that they need to partner up to get something delivered, it's going to fall down. So I think those are the two key parts from my perspective.
Brilliant. Well, unfortunately, we've, as you can see, lots come. We've reached the top of the hour. So I'd just like to ask, in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about today's webinar? The winning tip comes from Tim, who said, don't expect your call volumes to drop with self-service. Rather expect your call conversation topics with customers/residents to be different. So congratulations, Tim. We'll be in touch after the webinar. A reminder of if you can complete the survey when you leave our webinar. The replay and slides will be available later on this afternoon. And we are taking a quick break, but we will be back on the 10th of March to talk about managing change in the contact centre. But to today's speakers, thank you so much to our 3 brilliant speakers. Paul Weald, thank you as always for a great presentation.
You're very welcome, Rachel, and well done, audience. You were actually very, very informed.
Brilliant. And also, thank you so much to Dave McMahon from NewDay. Thank you for bringing on your first webinar.
Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. And to Jay Gupta from Talkdesk, thank you so much for your insight as well.
Thank you. It was great. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. So we will see everyone in a few weeks' time. Thank you all.
Cheers.
Goodbye.
Bye.